Hello and welcome to the Educator's Corner podcast, the show that brings you conversations with educators from all over the world. Conversations where we stay curious for just a little longer about the issues, challenges and opportunities which we are facing in our schools and our communities. So, whether you're walking, running, cooking or just relaxing, I hope that you're ready for a compelling conversation with today's guest, Kat Place, head teacher at Jubilee Park Primary School, Newport, South Wales. Welcome to the show, Kat. Thanks so much for being with us today. How was your summer?
Well, it was absolutely wonderful. I did nothing. And I'm really proud of myself. I've had a complete switch off, first time in 6 years. And only this week did I open my laptop and start to think about emails and school. We don't actually start back till Friday, so I'm still 2 days to go.
Delighted that you've been able to switch off over the holiday. Right, well, we're going to be talking about three things, I think, today. We're going to be talking about leadership in your school. We're going to be talking about sustainability, because I think your students are involved in a really exciting project, which I think we want to share with the world. And of course, we want to talk about the topic that's been getting a huge amount of publicity all over the media, all over the world, and that, of course, is AI. And in our case, we want to explore a little bit about its potential impact on education and how, as leaders, we can help each other start to think about how we're going to manage this with our schools and with our communities. So that's setting out the agenda. I say, so delighted that you can join us. I know you're really busy getting ready for the start of the school year. But can you just set the scene for us a little bit about your school down in Newport, South Wales? Tell us a little bit about your school, Kat.
Yeah, with absolute pleasure. I'm a very proud head teacher of my wonderful school. I've had the most unique opportunity of opening Jubilee Park as a brand new school on a brand new housing estate in Newport. I'm a Newport girl, so I was born and bred in the city, comprehensive school, educated in the city, did go slightly away, only to Cardiff, to university, and then came running back home. And then I had this amazing opportunity of opening a brand new school as a head teacher. And I think when you look at doing that, you don't actually realise how enormous the task actually is, and also the task on a growing community. So just to set the scene, it was a derelict waste site on the side of Newport, and there were 3 housing developers that bought the land. Part of the agreement was to build a school, which was then handed over to the local authority when the build was finished. So it's a local authority run school, and I opened it, and the community has literally grown over the last 6 years. Houses have literally still being built now. So every year we've had more children join us. So we opened September 2017 with just over 100 children and 16 staff. And within 3 years, we got up to our capacity of 374 children and just over 50 staff. And now we're actually oversubscribed as a school. So a huge journey, with COVID thrown into the mix as well. But we were able sort of to finish last year and that end of year 6 of really getting that feeling of, we know where we are. We've spent a long 6 years really developing our school, growing our culture, understanding what it means to be at Jubilee Park. And I feel like we're going into year 7 really open now with a clear idea of where we go for the future.
Absolutely fantastic. What an achievement. And I think if you try to break down a school into its different component pieces, it's so complex. And I've not had that privilege of starting a school from scratch, but trying to get all those different bits and pieces together and functioning and working really well, I think that must be a considerable challenge. And you certainly got a very impressive ESTIN report, didn't you, in the last 12 months?
You have to mention that.
And that certainly gave you an endorsement that you've done actually a fantastic job. And I'm sure you don't need an ESTIN report to tell you that. I had the privilege of coming down to your school in early July. And sometimes you can just tell when you walk into the school and you see the staff smiling, you see the children smiling and engaged and energised, and you can just feel sometimes within a few minutes that you're in a really exciting, vibrant, dynamic school, and the children are engaged and enjoying their learning, and the staff are enjoying working there. So what an achievement. I wonder if you had one tip for, there's a lot of founding principals out there, especially in the international sector. maybe 70 or 80 new schools are opening over the next few weeks. If you had one tip, having gone through that experience as a founding principal, what would that one tip be to colleagues who may be starting that journey this year?
It's easy. Just be you and stay true to what you absolutely fundamentally believe in. And I think that even when things got tough, even arguing with architects right at the beginning of the journey, down to making brave decisions around our curriculum, not following the norm, not just doing things because that's what you do in education in Wales, or that's what you do in education anyway. Really thinking about what drives me as a person, what am I about, and building that school on that. So when you are faced with challenges, and we've had enormous challenges over the last 6 years, that you go back to you and you go back to what actually drives you as an individual. For me, that is fundamentally, I am so passionate about learning. We have a vision principle within our school, which is igniting a passion for learning, and that is absolutely what drives everything I do. So every decision goes back to, does it ignite that passion for learning? And if it doesn't, we don't do it. And I've come across some hard conversations with that, but I've stuck true to it. And I think 6 years in, that's one thing I'm really proud of. It would be very easy to just join bandwagons and to jump on flattery or come and join this, do this, and actually taking that stand back and thinking, no, is it actually what I want for this school? That would be my advice. Just be you and hold strong, hold your nerve.
And I think it's fantastic that as a head teacher of Jubilee Park Primary School, it's fantastic for you and your staff and your students, your community, that you feel that you can be that authentic leader in that setting. I think that's wonderful. We had the wonderful opportunity to hear I think it was your Year 6 students. They were sharing with us some work they did on air quality in your school environment. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and maybe what your vision is for that project and how it's going at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be really remiss of me to not mention our friend Ian at this point. So Ian Phillips of Inspire Edu, who I actually had the privilege of meeting at a conference last September. And it was just one of those moments. He was sitting in front of me and then we began chatting. He's Welsh, so that straight away, made us have a chat to each other with our Welsh accents coming through. And quite quickly we realised we had a real common interest, number one in inspiring learning, but also in digital learning and really thinking about how we can use digital learning proactively for our children and for staff. And I suppose the Air Quality Project really came from there. Before I talk about the project, I want to go back to your question there about vision and how does it actually tie in for our vision. For us as a school, we have got our own curriculum. It's called our Thrive curriculum. It's nothing to do with any brand. It's not a bought-in scheme of work. We spend a lot of time, we spent 5 years designing our curriculum. And then last year was our first year of curriculum realisation. It's built around Curriculum for Wales, which is a very new curriculum development for schools in Wales. And our mantra for our curriculum really is learning to thrive in a transforming world. So everything that we do, all the planning the teachers do starts with the children within their class. They don't repeat any planning, they don't regurgitate any planning year on year, term on term, and they certainly don't fit topics or themes into nice, neatly half-termly blocks or anything like that. So this is very bespoke curriculum for the needs of our children. And what we want our children to be able to do when they leave us is to have those knowledge, skills and experiences so they can develop as responsible citizens of the world, and we really do spend a lot of time talking about things like Cynefin, that's a Welsh phrase of belonging. So Cynefin, community and citizenship, is one of our key lenses for our curriculum. Wellness is another key lens. Equality and diversity, I have to get that right around then. And we do a lot of work around anti-racism. And then the final one is sustainability, and I suppose that's where this Air Quality Project came in. So the project came about through contact with Ian and also with a company called Think-Air. And Think-Air is a Welsh company, and they do a lot of work in terms of developing tools to gather quality, to gather live data on air quality. And it was just really fascinating finding out about these things and thinking, a little bit outside the box, thinking about actually how can we use this in our schools, particularly with our school being on a building site for half of the time. There's diggers everywhere. There's always some noise going on. There's always some dust going everywhere. And actually, what can we do to get our children to really start to think passionately about sustainability? So we worked really closely with Ian and Sam, who was part of ThinkAir, and also my leader for digital learning, Kelly Price, who has been instrumental in this project of really taking on board developments within, understanding air quality and particulate matter, and using all these words that we didn't even know ourselves before, and actually thinking about how can we conduct experiments with our children so they get that understanding of real world sustainability issues. So our ThinkAir team used to meet weekly. They'd meet online with Ian and Sam as well. So actually be working with people in the trade, which I think is absolutely important. It is not just, looking at Google or anything like that. It's actually meeting with people who this is their job and actually inspiring our children with ThinkAir being a Welsh company that you could do this as a job in the future. Sam from ThinkAir does a lot of work with Welsh Government, and he was brilliant in saying to the children, what you're doing, I'm going to take back to Welsh Government. So they could really start to have that sense of what they were finding out was going to have an important development across our country as well. They actually called themselves citizen scientists, and we love that phrase within our school. They had hypotheses, they were conducting experiments, they were telling us as staff what to do, which they also loved, as you can imagine, a group of year 6 children telling their head teacher what she was allowed and wasn't allowed to do. And through the use of this air quality monitor, the children were actually able to identify what we've called clean air zones within our school. You might be sat there thinking, okay, so what? What's a clean air zone? But actually, when you think about it in detail, it's so vitally important that we know this. I've got a number of children in our school with asthma. I've got children in our school with additional learning needs that have respiratory issues and real severe concerning issues with their health. We also know that there is more asthma on the rise. And why is that? Why have we got more children having asthma as they grow up compared to, say, when I was a child? Quite a while ago, but why is that getting more and more prevalent within our society? And actually what we were able to find out was those areas of high air pollution within our school and where they were. And the children thought this was fascinating. So we've got a communal area within our school called our Hub Dusky, and they found on a Tuesday evening air pollution got really high. We think, well, what's going on? What happens on a Tuesday evening? Well, actually, it works out that's a professional learning session for staff. Staff would come to that session with their bags, their coats, all the other things that teachers and teaching assistants carry around every day. And the children actually said, well, if you leave those out and leave them in your classrooms without bringing them all to one central space, would that have a difference? And it did. So now coats and bags are banned from that area, and we're able to say that is a clean air zone. And it's those little things that actually start to really build up. So through this project, we've now been able to move the air quality monitor outside. As you can imagine, they picked up massively the beginning and end of school days. We had huge peaks in air pollution, and it's that idle time of parents driving past, not switching the engine off of their car, dropping the children off, and the irony being most of our parents actually live within a 5-minute walk of our school because we're on a purpose-built area and a purpose-built housing development. So it's really about empowering our children and saying, you can be the change makers within our area. You can be those people that say to parents, don't drive, walk. And we do a lot around active travel, and we've seen a huge change, I would say, in our parents' attitudes and more children actively travelling to school, both as a result of this project and as a result of another pupil voice research we did around active travel. So it's been a fascinating journey for our children, and then it got even more exciting because we were able to present to our guests that we had in our event in July, and now they've also started working with Kellett School in Hong Kong, and obviously looking at the air pollution, and they met online and shared online recording of videos, and the children in my school couldn't believe the data of the air quality coming from Hong Kong compared to air quality in Newport, and again that just opens the world to our children. Our world isn't just based in Newport and South Wales, and it's really inspiring our children to say, you might have had a spark there. That might be something that goes with you now through into secondary school, and actually might spark something that you can make that change across the world, and be sustainable and truly be a global citizen for the future.
Takes me back 6-7 weeks, that moment when I was hearing your students talk about this project. And I think, as you just articulated there, and what they were able to articulate also very powerfully, is that if you involve people in a problem, even if it's very young people in a problem, and you involve them in this science experiment that you've done, they start to see the data, they start to understand the data. So they're getting aware of the problem because they're actually measuring the air quality themselves. That gives them knowledge. And then that gives them so much energy and power to want to do something about it. Rather than if you or I came into your school and said, right, we're going to have an assembly now, let's talk about air quality. Because you've involved them in it, because they've taken ownership, they now feel very passionately about that. And it sounds like they've gone from thinking about the impact of coats and bags on air quality to now their own traffic from their families and how that's causing the problem. And now how they're then thinking even broadly, linking up with the school in Hong Kong. So I think it sounds a wonderful example of how if we involve our students in these issues, we've got much better chance of them working with us to jointly co-construct solutions to some of these what might seem insurmountable problems. Any other conclusions you'd like to draw from that work so far, or perhaps where's it going next this term, do you think?
I think that, for us is continuing that. They were our year 6 children, so they've gone now off to secondary school. So it's about ensuring that work continues within our school. But just touching on something you just said, Kai, I think part of our curriculum, and I go full circle back to where we started this bit of our conversation around the vision for this work and the fact that it goes right back to our curriculum vision. Our children were really able to take control of this work because we invest in pupil voice, we invest in children having that ability to solve problems. We didn't just throw this on them and then they went back into class and had worksheets to complete or listen to a teacher at the front of the classroom tell them what to do. Our whole approach to learning and teaching is based around inquiry and finding out and exploring and being creative and play. And so I think because of that, our children were naturally really able to take control of this work as well. So, if anyone's listening thinking that sounds brilliant, it's not something I don't believe that you can just lift as a project and put into a school. It has to be part and parcel of a bigger vision for learning and teaching.
So what a pioneering project. Sounds absolutely brilliant. So we will put some details in the show notes at the end of the podcast. If you'd like to get involved with this project, with Think Air, with Ian Phillips, Sam at Think Air, Ian Phillips also working on the project, working with Jubilee Park Primary School and the Kellett School, we could be starting a really exciting global bit of research there, and also, most importantly, action. Talking about big issues, artificial intelligence. There's so much out there. I mean, I don't know when you started hearing about this, Kat. I mean, I think it got onto my radar just after Christmas. And I have not, in my 30 plus years of education, I don't think I've experienced something that has caused so much thinking, so many articles, so many people talking about it. And I think, it's came into our schools or into the world about halfway through last school year, and we could spend the rest of that year thinking, it's quite interesting. What's going to happen? Is it going to bring the world down? Are we all going to die? Are we going to be taken over by robots? Is it going to revolutionize education, or it's just another education fad? But I think as we start another school year, I think a lot of us in our schools are thinking, what actually is it? What do I need to do as a teacher? What do I need to do as a school leader? Do I need to do anything? So where are you with AI, Kat? What does it mean to you? How are you making sense of what's happening out there?
Yeah, great question. How long have we got? My gosh. I go back to my PGCE days now, and this was 21 years ago. I did my PGCE, and my dissertation for my PGCE was about the effectiveness of electronic whiteboards. How quickly has the conversation changed? Within 21 years, we've gone from the effectiveness of electronic whiteboards to AI. And I think, for me, digital leadership has always been a huge passion of mine. It's something I've led across the area. We're in South Wales. It's something I've been sort of instrumental with Welsh Government, part of the National Digital Learning Council for years. And we're very fortunate in Wales. We've got a very forward-thinking government in terms of digital learning. We've got an all-Wales learning platform called Hub, which all schools, all children, all teachers use, which is absolutely fantastic. And then when I come then full circle, okay, AI, where do we sit with that? Like you said, is it going to be that robots are going to take the place of teachers, and cybersecurity, and everyone's panicking that your face is going to get stolen and your identity is going to get stolen, and how do we protect children? And you can end up in very, very quickly this rabbit hole of panic and fear as a school leader, particularly around safeguarding. And so I go back to, what drives me? Well, learning. So I've got to learn. I've got to be part of that. Educators learning about AI and learning about the effectiveness. And then when you know stuff, then you can act on it. You can't just sit there and read articles and worry and say, well, it's not for me, it's not for my school, because actually quite quickly it could take over. Also, you can't just dive straight in and say, right, we're going to have ChatGPT writing this for us, and we're going to have all these different apps doing this, because actually that could be quite meaningless as well. So first and foremost, for me, it's about me learning as a school leader how we can effectively and safely use AI. And fundamentally, that's not at the expense of human relationships. And I can't stress that enough. The whole way that my school has grown and been so successful in the last 6 years has been we have prioritised relationships. I say it all the time. That human connection, love and care comes first, and I would argue no robot can demonstrate that as a human can. So I think first of all for schools, and if you sat there thinking, okay, that all sounds great, but I still don't actually know what AI is. I think one of the first steps, and this is where we have started, is saying, what do we already do? What have we already got that actually is artificial intelligence, automated learning, and the use of technology to speed up processes that humans can't do? Because that's effectively what AI is, that adaptive learning. And actually spending time as staff almost pooling all the things we already do. Simple things like online registration, online timetabling, use of learning platforms, online personalised assessments, apps like Duolingo, all those things of learning different languages, automated reality that you could be using in the classroom. We've used that for like tours of museums, and all of those things, augmented reality like Minecraft, voice assisted learning for our children, particularly our children with additional learning needs. We have a specialised resource base in our school, and we have children that will be using like the Google voiceovers and all those type of things. That is all part of AI. And actually, that's not to be feared at all. And they're things that we can get better at using. There's things that we can use more effectively. Looking at online programs for intervention, we've got a number of online programs we use to enhance children's learning and support children who are maybe struggling a little bit, particularly around literacy and numeracy. And those personalised learning platforms really support children in developing, and it responds to the answers those children are putting in. Again, that's AI, and I think sometimes we don't recognise that enough. We use things like Canva for creative content. We talk a lot about gamification and how online games can support learning. All of this sits within our digital strategy, and again, I go full circle. For me, it's about school leaders ensuring they've got a clear digital strategy, fundamentally driven by cybersecurity first and foremost, and safeguarding, but that we're allowing our staff to really recognise where we are using AI first of all, but actually then how we can develop with all the new developments coming in.
Okay, so to first of all acknowledge where we are, and like you've said, the whole range of things which AI is already permeating many things we do, and then like you say, being clear about how do we learn more about this. So we're already doing this, how do we learn? And I'm sure as a primary practitioner, from what you're saying, one of the best ways to learn is through play.
I think as well, it's about, as a school leader, particularly as a head teacher, as a principal, really making sure that you've got that strategy, that you really, you can allow people to play. But I think you also have to have that within parameters, so that you've got consistency across the school. I think it'd be really useful. I've got a digital strategy. I've shared it with you previously, Kai, and it'd be really good. We could maybe pop that at the end of the show notes for people to have a look at and get feedback on, because this is collaborative. This is not something that, you know, schools should be saying, oh, we're really great at AI and closing the doors and keeping it all to themselves. I think the whole point is that we should be collaborating and sharing. And when we set about developing our strategy for AI, this was only done literally end of June last year. You know, this is sort of 4 weeks of school old. And the overarching question is, how can we protect human relationships whilst developing a digital strategy for AI? So how can we ensure that at all costs we keep that human relationship, that we don't become automated robots ourselves, we don't lose that human touch, they're not, you know, we don't assess children just by online quizzes and those type of things, but actually how can we make sure that we're using technology when and where appropriate, allowing our staff to have that agency to play, to explore, to experiment, but providing that opportunity for them to feedback as well in a really safe environment, so that they're able to come to maybe a professional learning session and share what they've done and actually be confident in saying, that was absolutely rubbish, I'm not doing that again, or that really challenged my thinking, I'd like to think about how I can use that in a different context, and having that openness. And that comes back to school culture as well, and providing that open and honest culture for staff to be able to talk about these things. I think about in terms of communication and ensuring that digital communication is highly effective, because actually human connection, yes, we know that absolutely is key. But when you've got a huge staff, you also have to rely on digital communication. I can't go around every single day and have an in-depth conversation and share a bit of information with every member of my team. It's just impossible. So it's about valuing digital communication, those digital tools, and understanding the capabilities of technology as well.
If there's one thing I remember about your presentation on your digital strategy, and it'd be great if we'll share that as well at the end of the podcast, because there's some really useful elements to your strategy, and the way you set it out, I thought it was really clear. Reminded me that, you know, I think that your first point of your strategy is how we protect human relationships and how important that is. Even though we're talking about technology, we need to put people first and foremost. So we're acknowledging where we are with AI. We're playing with it. We're starting to talk about it with each other as a staff. And I think when we were having this conversation back in July, I was thinking, right, for September, I need to get some AI policies in place. So I need to start adapting my policies. But you, I think, reminded me and influenced my thinking very strongly by putting this emphasis on human relationships. You're saying, well, actually, Kai, before you start having some policies, do you not think you need to open up some conversations with our colleagues, with our students, with our parental community, and getting to understand what they think are some of the issues with AI, what are their hopes, what are their fears, and from those conversations, we then might be able to start to formulate some of our policies or amend them. Are you still thinking that, or have you changed your mind over the summer?
No, 100% still doing that. And I think you've mentioned a really important part of our school community there with parents and governors. You know, many of our parents could actually be working in a digital industry and have a very different viewpoint to what we have. And actually, you know, they could be working in AI themselves, and let's tap into that knowledge and really use that to our benefit within our schools. And I think we've also got parents that perhaps are thinking a bit like we are, like, what on earth is it? And should I be scared? You know, and I'm talking as a mum myself of a daughter who's 11, nearly 12, off to secondary school in a few days' time. My approach to technology with her is open it up, and we have conversations. And I think, you know, not all parents have that same view, and that's absolutely fine. But at the same time, we're in a changing world. We have to give the children those tools. And I think working with our parents is absolutely key in getting their understanding, so that they don't feel scared or threatened by AI either, that they're able to say, oh, actually, I can see its benefit in this point, and I understand here, this is where I need to come in and protect children, or maybe, you know, check children's digital devices, make sure I got those parent controls set up at home, and have those open conversations with children as well. So I think that's a huge part of our community. You know, looking ahead for me this year, that's the one area that we haven't gone into yet, but is a massive area that we will be focusing on as the year progresses.
Parents, very important to involve them in the discussion, because there might be a whole range of views and ranges of knowledge and understanding about what AI is, and they might be quite worried about how it might affect their education. Is this something you've started to talk about with children? I mean, you've mentioned your own daughter there moving from year 6 into 7. Obviously, your school goes up to year 6. Is this something you've started to explore with them? Is this something you're going to?
We have, yeah, we've done quite a lot of work around embracing technology with our children. You know, our part of our Estin report really highlights the technological skills of our children are hugely advanced. You know, and I'm talking about some of our children in year 5 and year 6 looking at coding at industrial standards, you know, professional standards. So our children are coming in with a very high level of digital skills, and so we've had to be really focused on ensuring we enhance those skills as they progress through the school. But with that comes that teaching of the safeguarding and the risk. And again, we've been very open with our children of saying, we're not going to close certain things down. Yes, we've got our web filtering. I don't want anyone panicking. You know, we've got web filtering, we do all of that. But actually teach the children of some of the dangers. And one of the things that our year 5 and year 6 teachers did last year, they had a theme around wellness, and it was all around body image, because what we were noticing was the use of mobile phones outside of school is incredible. There were so many children on different apps where they can change the way they look, and that they can post photos themselves that don't quite look with filters and different voices. So our teachers actually did a series of lessons, did a whole theme around the benefits and debated that in class. What are the benefits of filters and changing voices and those kind of things, and actually what are the dangers? And I remember popping into one of the classes actually as this lesson started, and the teacher had done a video of herself. She'd put a filter on, so all the blemishes, not that she had many anyway, but the blemishes had gone and the hair looked a bit shinier. But when she started speaking, it wasn't her voice. And the children were like, that's not you. She went, it is me. Listen to what I'm saying. They were like, yeah, that's what you say, but that's not your voice. And that just started an incredible conversation around, you know, the ethics really of digital learning and AI. And having those conversations just opens children's ideas and it challenges their thinking. And I think the more we do that, the more important it is. Now, as we go into this next year, it might be that we're looking at that from a slightly different angle, because we don't just repeat those lessons, like I said earlier. It could be that the children are thinking a lot more about image and clothes, and we look at fashion, and we look how actually, fashion and how adverts really influence you, and looking at all the ways that, when you're on the apps, those certain buttons you press and how it will give you the different information. Then we start talking about algorithms and actually expose them to that word, an algorithm. This is what happens, so that they know. And I think that part of digital learning is so important, but quite often it's not the one that is taught, because it can be quite a grey area, and particularly for teachers to feel a bit like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing here. But we're very much that we open those conversations and we have those debates with our children and encourage them to have their own opinion, but to also to listen to the opinion of others as well, which has been really important.
That sounds great. I mean, it sounds like you're having some amazing conversations with young people about AI and digital learning. You've done a survey with the students about their online habits and behaviours, and that it sounded like it had started to spark some really interesting conversations, both with the students about online learning and online behaviour, and then when you were playing back to the parents, there were also some quite interesting reactions there, I think. So that if you think about, if you're listening out there and you're wondering, how do you start this conversation with year 5, year 6 or year 9, perhaps one way into it is do a survey initially, get some data, and that data might be a way into opening up conversations with young people about what they're up to. And certainly I was speaking to both some year 5 students and some year 9 students. We were talking about the future of the world, and I didn't think it was going to be about AI at all. And within about half an hour, we were talking about how the future would be affected by AI, and they were straight into, AI, we can't use it at school; it's cheating. So, and there was a fairly strong view on that, and so I think that that again needs opening up with young people. So, it sounds like as we go into the new term, we're going to acknowledge what we're already doing with AI. We're going to encourage our colleagues to play. We are going to think about how we open up conversations with our students, with our colleagues, with our parents, to try to start to understand where we all are with this and try to make some sense of it. Is there anything you'd like to add in terms of where you're going this term with AI, Kat?
For us, it's keeping the conversation going. We very much started the using the term AI in the summer term, so it's about really making sure our staff have that understanding and have that opportunity to play around and to try different things and to bring that back, and we talk about it as a staff and go back to what does that mean for us, how does that tie into our overall vision principles for our school and particularly for our Thrive curriculum, how does that support and drive learning, how does that enable deeper learning. I think from a leadership perspective, it's also about looking at those ways that we can use it effectively to maybe make our job a little bit easier as well. And I'm talking around the administrative burdens that we sometimes have, those things we have to do. And actually, is there a quicker way of doing it? And I think it's about us playing as well, not just saying to the teachers and the teaching assistants, off you go and play, but maybe as head teachers, let us play around with a few things and maybe share any quick wins that we can, to make our lives a little bit easier so we can spend more time with the children and do the bits we love rather than sitting in the office typing all day. So I think, for us, that's a massive part of just playing. We want to have conversations with others. We really want, and I really welcome that global community of educators and networking beyond the boundaries of Wales. Wales is a very small country, it's a very forward-thinking country in terms of education, but it is small, and I think we learn so much from working with others. And just because you're in an international school with different age children, some same age, some older, doesn't mean we can't learn from each other. And I think it's about really opening that. And I'm a huge advocate of meeting people and collaborating. I suppose that's probably where my passion lies in terms of professional learning and collaboration. And this year I really want to be able to have more conversations myself and my staff with colleagues across the world as well. So really interested to keep connections going and to hopefully this podcast will open up some more connections as well. And hopefully, like you said right at the start, that we can have this global network where we're sharing ideas and not rushing straight to writing a policy, because that's not what's going to drive change, but actually sharing and working with each other. On the notion of sharing, I actually read an article that was only published 3 days ago. I read it last night. It was written by Michael Fullen, Cecilia Azorin, Alma Harris and Michelle Jones, and it's all around leadership and AI. I'll send you the link because it is really interesting, and there's no answers. It's very much what we're talking about here, as in it's good and bad, and these people say this, these people say that, but it goes right back to actually we want deep learning. We want our children to be deep learners and deep thinkers, and we can use technology really effectively to enable that to happen. But actually it requires, and they call it that human ingenuity and creativity. And I think as long as we keep hold of that we involve our students in working out those solutions, and we want them to be those change makers, but that we keep hold of that human ingenuity and creativity and relationships.
Absolutely, Kat. So many wonderful things there. I mean, it'd be great to share that article. That sounds like could be really useful. I'm a great admirer of Michael Fullen, Alma Harris, I think you mentioned there as well. Yeah, I think we all need to learn, read, discuss, and explore this new territory, because it is new territory in a lot of ways, and we need to explore it in a way, like you say, it then empowers the sort of learning that we want to see in our schools. And that's my biggest hope for AI, that it's going to empower our staff to do an even better job, and it's going to empower our learners so they can learn even better as well. So that's my biggest hope. But I understand, I'm sure you understand too, and you've mentioned it quite a few times, there are safeguarding concerns, there are safety concerns. And so as we do this exploration, we need to make sure we are putting in the guardrails, and that's something we will be exploring in future podcasts around the safety. And at some point, we will have to think about how do we start to capture this, or how do our different policies affect this. But like you say, having these conversations, I turned up your school thinking my priority was to write a policy. Having had the conversation with you and with Ian and Sam and others there, it was a great conversation on that afternoon. Through that conversation, it changed my thinking. And like I say now, we need to have the conversations to understand what's going on, understand multiple perspectives on AI, and that will help us adapt our practices and policies so they're much more meaningful. So thank you, Kat, so many wonderful bits of words of wisdom there. I can see very clearly why you lead such a successful school and why you've grown your school to be so successful in the short time you've been there. We're now going to move into the quickfire round. We've got 4 questions, so we're going to see how quickly you can think on your feet and understand a little bit more about you. So, what's the biggest leadership lesson that you keep on having to learn?
Oh gosh, it's hold your nerve. I said it very, very clearly, very articulately at the beginning of the podcast. You know, what drives me, stay true to your why, and, you know, be you. But this really, really hard. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned is when I haven't, and I have made mistakes, you know, and it hasn't been utopia for the last 6 years by any stretch of the imagination. When I look back at those mistakes, or maybe those slightly wrong decisions I've made, is because I've either listened to somebody else, and I'm all for listening to other people, but I've let their why influence what I'm doing, and actually I haven't followed my gut, and I haven't, you know, actually stayed true to me. So that's probably been the biggest lesson, is just to keep reminding myself what is my driver, and, you know, be reflective as well.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. Question number 2. Can you share with us a key moment in your leadership journey that made you think or lead differently?
Absolutely. It was the moment I opened those doors at Jubilee Park in September 2017. And I say that because I was 11 years a deputy head prior to becoming a head. So, you know, a long time as a deputy head. And I was data. I was like, go get him, go do this, really driven. Still am. But actually, when I opened those doors of my school, and it was like, this is it. This is actually how we're going to be doing things differently, and we're going to really think about what matters the most to our children. I started to really change as a person as well. And I think that that looking at not being afraid to say I love what I do, and I absolutely love working with children, and not shying away from using those words, and actually it's about relationships. And I think I learned a massive thing in terms of, it's not just about product and pushing out these end goals all the time. It's actually that process and bringing people with you all the way.
Absolutely. So that all takes a huge amount of energy. What's your favourite way to unwind at the end of the day so you can re-energise for the next day?
Well, I'm a bit weird because I then do more energetic things, and I run. And so I love running. And I think I actually got injured back in June, and I really struggled through the last half of the summer term because I didn't have that release. I do my best thinking and learning while I'm running. Quite often I can be spotted stopping running, getting my phone out, writing some notes down because something's come to me as I'm running. I love reading. I read every day, and I actually make that time. And you could look at me and think, and some people do think, that I'm some sort of workaholic, and actually I'm not. I love what I do, but it also doesn't define me. I am who I am. I'm a single mum with an 11-year-old. I run. I love reading. I'm a doctorate student. That all makes part of me. So, you know, for me, that winding down is probably just, you know, doing a bit of cooking, running, watching telly. Quite boring, really.
Okay, fantastic. But so important that we do that, and whatever way we unwind as leaders or as teachers, that we find a way that helps us unwind and helps us switch off a little bit. Being a head teacher is one of the best jobs in the world because...
Oh, so hard. Because you get to work with so many different people from that local level within your own school. You get to influence the lives of so many people. I love it when I walk around Newport and I bump into people from my first class. They're taller than me now. They're in their 20s. And I'm so proud. And they always say, I still remember you, you know, and those moments really matter. And I think when you take a step back and you think about what are you actually doing as a head teacher, and you are shaping the future, what a privilege. I wouldn't do anything else.
Thank you, Kat, for joining us on the Educator's Corner this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast today.
Diolch yn fawr. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And we didn't talk about the Welsh language. That's
just drop that in there.
You've been listening to the Educator's Corner podcast, the show that brings you conversations with educators from all over the world, the podcast where we stay curious for just a little bit longer. The Educator's Corner podcast is hosted by me, Kai Vasher, and produced by Stuart Pardo, Zoe Snell and Marion James, and by BSM BSS Productions.